even for men, teaching sexual mastery and like a whole different way to look at, building a sacred sex life. They're like, where were you when I was 20? Here I am 50 and I've gone about it a whole different way. And even using different terminology around it makes it a lot more fun and sacred, like when you can have intentional sex and set intentions before you actually come together and just make it such a beautiful thing where you honor each other as lovers in the relationship. It completely changes it. But you have to want to be willing also to, have the courage to change your mindset and really, create new beliefs around it.
Hello and welcome to the Go Encouraged podcast, where I talk to real people about real life to try and get some insight and understanding around their experiences building courage. Before I tell you who my guest is, I would like you to go over to YouTube and subscribe to this channel because it makes a huge difference in terms of growing and basically getting on other guests. So help me to do that. All right, so who's on the show today? We are in the relationship series today, and we are talking to Teresa Young, who is a sex and relationship coach. She works with women to get them to understand what it is that men really want, and she works with men to get them to understand what really turns women on. So if those are questions that you'd like answers to, stick around because we're about to find out. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous about this one because I'm not sure where this conversation is going to go, but let's see what happens. Hey, Teresa, welcome to the Go Encourage podcast. Really pleased to have you on today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here today.
I'm so excited as well. And I have a little confession to make. I think when I first came on Instagram, way back when, I think you were one of the first few accounts I ever followed. So I feel like I've known you for a while.
Aw, that's cute.
And I have to say, your content, the thing that really spoke to me about your content was, why is she saying what I'm thinking? Like, here's a woman who knows exactly what men have been saying to each other. Like, what is up with that? So, yeah, I'm so glad we're going to unpack some of that today.
Yeah, me too. That's funny you mentioned that because I've even been asked if I have a male content writer. And nope, I do not. I write it all myself.
All from experience, right?
Yes. Lots of
Excellent.
experience.
And that's what I love to do in Go Encourage. It is about just getting people's experience and your insight into things that other people can hopefully learn from as well.
Well, thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Well, okay, so it's tradition on the show to ask my guest what their name means. So what does your name mean?
That's funny you should ask. My name means the harvester.
The harvester.
So I like to say I'm harvesting love.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. What a great thing to harvest.
Right? We need more of that in the world.
Definitely, definitely. And just to be clear to everyone listening, this is part of our relationship series here at Go Encourage. And so we are really going to crack down on some relationship insights, which I'm excited about. All right. So next question. Can you tell us where you're from? Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up, where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. So I live in the desert in Arizona where it's hot and sunny every day. And I've been here for 20 plus years. And I originally grew up in Oregon where it rained every day.
Wow. And what was the move? What made you move? Was it the rain or life
Nope.
circumstances?
Like any good wife, I came with my husband's job. My husband's job at the time, it moved us here. So that was an amazing move, though. I absolutely love living in the desert. It's great.
Amazing. And then what kind of family upbringing did you have? Do you have brothers and sisters, kids?
Yeah, so that's another funny story. Ironically, I grew up in a single wide trailer on a 500-acre farm in Oregon in the middle of nowhere. And
Wow.
yeah, I grew up, we would hay in the summers, stack wood in the winter. Pretty much our only family vacation every year was deer and elk hunting and camping. So I can hang with the best of the guys. Let's just say that.
Right. And was that with siblings? Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I do. I have an older sister and older brother. So I was the baby of the family. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
The youngest, the one who got all the grace and the favor, maybe? Or got away with
Yeah.
things?
Yeah. My brother picked on me a lot because my mom would always, use me as the example. Like, well, Teresa will do everything and Teresa likes her vegetables and Teresa takes her medicine well. And so he was like, and he was the middle child. So he had this little thing against me all the time. But yeah, so it was great. My family dynamics were probably relatable to a lot of people. I had parents that were married up until I was about 13 years old. Unfortunately, my dad did get into drinking a lot, which, that kind of plays into my brand a little bit too, because I was the baby. And I can remember, growing up, my dad would talk to me a lot. And I think he told me a lot of his heartfelt stories because I was little. And I think he thought I wouldn't remember a lot of the things that he would say to me as a child. But I remember most of them. And so that's kind of how I write, is from the heart of what my dad, felt and used to tell me as a child. And so I grew up watching him, never really getting his needs met, but also not knowing how to verbalize those, and just, being the real manly man. We don't talk about it. We just stuff them
Mm.
and we just drink them away, So that's kind of what I watched. And it was sad. My parents ended up getting divorced when I was about 13. And then my dad ended up passing away from alcoholism when I was 24.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. And it
So,
sounded like that was quite a close relationship then, in terms of if he was sort of sharing his feelings with you and maybe not anyone else. You must have had a great
mhm.
connection.
Yeah, we definitely did. It was really sad, but it's always weighed heavy on my heart. And so I've always had this, you know, deep sense of compassion for men, because I saw a man who, was my knight in shining armor, but yet he was still so weak inside. And really, at the end of the day, all he wanted was my mom, who he was totally in love with, to love him,
Mm.
and he also grew up with that primal trauma because he was adopted. And so for men that have to grow up with that trauma and their own birth mom you know, doesn't accept them, it really is hard for them. And a lot of men don't know how to talk through that. And so they do struggle with,
Mm.
addictions or things like that. And if the problem never gets tended to, the trauma starts to leak out into other areas of their lives, and especially in their
Yeah,
marriages.
absolutely. And such a heavy label of rejection that you carry around in those kinds of situations.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, looking for that to be met with connection makes a lot of
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then in terms of, are you close with your siblings now?
Yeah, I am definitely. Yep.
That's
My
cool.
sister's actually going to buy a winter house in Arizona next year, so that's exciting. She still is up in Oregon, but yep, we are all really close, and everything's worked out for the best. So, yeah.
Good. Oh, I'm
They
glad
they
to hear
kind
it.
of question my sister's like, when I started doing the respected man, she was like, "Oh my God, Teresa, what are you doing?" And to be honest with you, I really didn't set out to grow a business doing this. I started promoting it on, or started posting my perspective on how women should treat a man in a relationship on TikTok. And on day 3, my video went viral, and my mom, not my mom, but my son woke up, came in the kitchen, and he was like, "Good morning, Miss TikTok famous." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, Mom, your video hit 10,000 last night." And I was like, "What?" And so I just kept going. I literally started posting because I had 46 followers. I didn't think anybody knew who I, cared what I had to say. It was kind of like my private little journal. I'd write down my
Yeah.
thoughts and so on and so forth. And it just, expanded so fast. So I really felt into it, and have been doing it now for almost 3 years.
Wow. And how do
Yeah.
you, just pushing into that a little bit, how do your children feel about it?
They love it. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It was kind of funny at first. My son's friends would come over and I'd be like, "Do you guys want me to sign your backpacks?" And then, yeah, then they had to say, what does your mom do for work? And I go, "Tell them I'm a sex coach for men." But yeah, that was kind of crazy. As it started to grow, and I have been actually a hairstylist for almost 30 years now. And so I've worked with women. So I've worked on the
Mhm.
other side, of the relationship with women. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I like to say I'm a therapist. And so women come in and talk about
Therapist.
their relationships and their husbands. And so, I grew up in church, and I had different views on how to treat a man in a relationship. And women, they just weren't, open or receptive to hearing like what the Bible said, or, how to treat a man. And so I just researched and researched. I've been doing research since I was in my late 20s on, how to show up for men, and what do men need in relationships? Because the problem that a
Mm.
lot of women face is that you can ask a man, "How can I love you better? What do you need?" And a lot of men are like, "Oh, you're doing a good job. It's fine."
Mm.
Right. And so we just go about the day thinking everything is fine, when really not getting their needs met. And that's half the problem, because the other half of the problem is that a lot of them don't even know how to verbalize, what
Mm,
they want or need in the relationship. And so they just shut
mm.
down.
Absolutely. And I think even asking for help as a man is difficult. I mean, it's one thing asking another man, your peers, but it's really difficult asking a woman who you're supposed to show up for as the guy with all the answers, you know.
Hmm.
So I can definitely see that. A question about like being a hairapist, let's say, is obviously it's not something I can relate to, but do women really do let it all out when they're at the salon? Do they really say, "Oh, this is what's going on at home"? Da,
Yes.
da, da, da? Is that like, is it that open?
Yes. Yes, we do. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I have this funny joke with the men that I coach now. I go, we should do like a candid camera TV show or something where I fly into your city and stage myself as a hairstylist, and you buy your wife a gift card to come sit in my chair because I want to see what she really has to say about the situation.
Right. Wow. Okay, that's kind of
Oh,
similar,
yeah.
you know. Wow. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Well, when you were younger, was hairdressing the sort of route that you wanted to go down, or did you kind of find yourself in that place?
That's funny you should ask that. Actually, when I was graduating from high school, I wanted to go to college to be a child psychologist. That
Oh,
was kind of my passion, and in a
interesting.
sense, I'm still doing that. So I worked with women, and now I work with men.
Brilliant. And
So yeah, and I graduated from high school in Michigan, and I ended up moving back to Oregon because I fell in love with my middle school, high school sweetheart boyfriend that I had back home off and on. And we got engaged when I was 18, and we were pregnant at 19.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I went to beauty school thinking my sister was a hairstylist. And I thought, you know what? I can always fall back on it. I'm good at doing hair. So I did that and then got pregnant. And so then, being a mom became my number one priority. So, but hair served me well. I absolutely loved it. I could work in my home, I could be around my kids, I could work my own hours. So it was all God's plan, definitely. And I learned so much about women, and that has helped me be able to coach men,
Mm.
because I can even say, hey, I can pull every woman I've ever worked with, and here's their answer.
Mm. And I love the other side of that as well, because you've worked with women. Of course, you are a woman, but you've
Mhm.
worked with women, and so that you can really see what it is that's so common with all of the women that you've spoken to, and therefore see
Mhm.
patterns in the way that they connect as well. So you can teach them as well as teach men,
Mhm.
which is pretty good because you've got the holistic approach then, instead of just
Mhm.
one perspective. So that's cool. I was going to ask you. What do you actually do now? So you made your TikTok video, and on
Yep.
video number 3, it kind of went out there. And then what was it that
Yes.
went through your mind? What did you think? Oh, I'll just keep doing this. It seems to get traction, or was it more of a sort of a playful, fun thing?
It wasn't. It was all of the thousands of men that were writing into me, telling me to, thanking me for making them feel that their needs weren't, crazy. They
Mm,
weren't crazy. They didn't feel crazy. They finally felt like their needs were valid and that it was okay to, desire sex and respect in a relationship, and how they can break it down into, simple terms and phrases that they can communicate with their partner to help her
mm,
better understand. Because a lot of the men, that I work with, I'm a men's coach. So I started a podcast after the video started getting bigger, and then I grew my Instagram, and I wasn't in a space to coach men at that time. So I hosted a podcast, and people that had men's programs that would help my audience in their situations, those were the guests on my podcast. And I wanted to help men and get them resources, as quickly as I could and be of value to them. So I started doing that and kept going with my brand because I was having just thousands of men write into me telling me that they were addicts, and I was helping them just with them feeling normal, me validating,
mm,
just verbally validating their needs. They were able to get off taking, pills during the month and drinking. And I thought, man, this is really my calling. Like, I feel that,
mm.
I was called to do this by God. And so I just kept pushing forward. And then, every time I get a change in my business, I'm like, this one's for you, Dad, because this isn't something I wanted to do years ago. If you asked me when I was
Yeah.
a little girl, I wouldn't be saying I'd be coaching men in sexless relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I
But
get that. I get that.
that's really what happens in relationships is, as a woman starts to feel resentful or disconnected from her partner, the first thing that she disconnects from is that sexual part of
Mm,
her. And so that's the first thing that, she'll pull away from and shut down from. Yet that's a really, a big need for men in relationships. And it's what I try to explain to women is it's not about having sex the way that our, society has programmed us to believe it is, but it's about creating a sacred, intimate life with your partner
mhm.
and being able to, you know, be there for him in that way. It's a God-given need and desire. It's, in the Bible, we're supposed to reproduce. And so, be fruitful. And so
Mm,
and the sad part is there's just not a lot of resources for women. I mean, I have had to, search through books and podcasts, and it's getting more known now, but to find how should a woman treat a man, there's so many books and resources on how men should treat women. But then,
absolutely.
women were like, there's just not a lot for us.
Yeah, and if
Right.
you do the work as a man as well, and you go, okay, I'm going to read the book, I'm going to go in the webinar, I'm going to do the course, I'm going to watch Fireproof, and I'm going to do the thing for 40 days, and I'm going to see some changes in the way that she responds to me. Great. And then you do that work for, I don't know, months, years, whatever, and then you get to that point, and you go, oh, what about me though? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, nah, you're making it all about you,
Thank you.
right? And so
Yeah.
it's like, but isn't it a two-way thing? I thought it was a two-way
Yeah,
relationship.
exactly. And that's what really frustrates me with a lot of men's programs I've come across is that they teach men how to show up as a better man for her and still keep her on a pedestal, right? Like that old saying,
Mm,
happy wife, happy life. And
mm,
so it's really like they teach the men, here's how to be a better man for yourself and here's how to show up for her. But they're missing a huge component, which is what I focus on, is how to communicate your needs effectively in a way that, she responds well to those and you can create that intimate life and, that you're missing that you want because it's important and it's attractive when a man can show up and say, no, that's not working. I need this. Can we, possibly integrate the two and make this change for both of us?
mm. And it's about having the trust in him that he's capable to do that. Because I guess when a woman, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when a woman's looking for a mate, she wants someone who can lead, someone who is capable of doing things and making things work on a consistent basis. So once you kind of match with him, it's funny how those things get stripped away, but they were the very things that, attracted to the woman to the man in the first place.
Yeah, that's really the case. And in a lot of relationships and marriages, that's what happened. He kind of lets her lead the show. He leads at work and then he walks in the door and he's like, okay, what do you need me to do? Right, because he's kind of lost at home. And so instead of taking that leadership role, he kind of steps back. And what a lot of men get confused is that taking the leadership role doesn't mean you're going to walk in the door and be like I like to say, a dominant controlling asshole.
Yeah.
Right, it's
Yeah.
about being a loving directional leader, right?
Mm,
Being aligned with who you are, what you want, where you want to lead the family. And it's
mm,
not done, being a dominant asshole there. And it's
mm,
a lot based on the delivery, right? Because
mm,
even in our world, you know, I've studied even little boys and you can watch little boys and you're a man, so you wouldn't even know this better than I do, but I raised two sons and I'm guilty of doing this as well. But we condition our sons to, oh, toughen up, you're a boy, don't do this, don't cry, don't that. And the only emotion that they're really allowed to feel without getting condemned is anger,
mm.
right? And so that's their number one go-to. So they lack that, emotional control because they don't know how to go to any other emotion but I'm fine or I'm pissed.
Mm. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I've done work in sort of groups with sort of men's ministries and things like that, where I've got the opportunity to talk to lots of different people, build relationships, men, and then what they're coming back with is pretty much similar. And for me, it was a really healing process because I was like, oh, I'm weird. I'm just a weird guy. And then when you start talking to other guys who actually open up, you're like, oh, you're the same. Oh, okay, all right. And then you start meeting more people like that. And what I was finding is the pattern is very much on point what we're talking about. Um, you know, have to show up. I can't show my emotions. I have to have a stiff upper lip. If I'm going to show emotions, I've got to have a bit of alcohol first, and then I can blame the alcohol for the feelings that are coming out of me as I'm talking. Oh, just had a few drinks the other night. Don't worry about it. But actually, it was the truth that was coming out in terms of how depressed they feel, how lonely they feel, how rejected they are, and how they can't make sense of women.
Women and our emotional storms, right? And then it drives men. I watched my dad do it my whole life. Like it drove him to drink. He didn't know how to deal with it. He was like, I'm out. I'm going to fall asleep in the chair and have a few drinks, and that was his way to kind of numb out, because he didn't really know how to lead. He felt like he could lead in his own life and it worked. But when he came into the home, it was, just a lot of confusion and feeling kind of lost. And then you start to lose that kind of magnetic attraction too, when your masculine partner is more in the feminine role, and then the feminine partner is more in the leadership masculine role. That energy starts to go away, and then you depolarize the relationship.
Absolutely. And I've seen that as well. And when you do, as a man, go into your more feminine energy, automatically you push your partner into the masculine energy. And then the more she goes into there, it just creates a further and further gap. The only way to rebalance it is to actively and intentfully go in the other direction and have strong communication to be able to do that. Which is good. I've got some questions for you, but before we get there, let's ask you some fun questions so people can get to know you a little bit more. So what's your go-to comfort food?
My go-to comfort food. Well, I have this issue. I get up every night at midnight and have a snack.
Nice.
I've done it since I was 10 years old. I have 3 kids. And so they're, oh my gosh, how old are my kids? 18, 21, and 27. And they love to tell the story like, Mom always gets up at midnight and eats a snack. So I really like ice cream.
Ice cream. Okay. And I guess where you are as well, it's always hot, right? So there's always an excuse for ice cream.
Yeah. Ice cream's always good year round in Arizona.
Nice. It was -2 here over the weekend. So
oh
ice
my
cream's
gosh. No
not the
ice
first
cream.
thing I
You're
come
thinking
for.
comfort
No
food like something warm. And I'm like, our weather just cooled off a little bit.
Okay. Clothing choice. What's your go-to clothing choice?
Definitely leggings. Yeah, leisure wear, something comfortable.
Yeah, stay comfortable.
Yeah.
Favorite place?
Favorite place. I love to go to Mexico.
Mexico. Okay. Yeah. Any
Yep. I
particular
love to
reason?
vacation there with my kids. It's been a tradition we do every year.
All right, cool. Favorite season?
Favorite season? Well, that's hard to say. I would say fall, but in Arizona, we don't really get fall because it's still 100 degrees and our leaves don't really turn unless we go up in the high valley. But I would say summer if I lived in a normal climate, but summer here it's all reversed here. So I say our summers are our winter because it's so hot you can't go outside. So kind of like you guys probably when it gets really cold, we start batting down the hatches in summer because the sun deteriorates everything and anything. And so you kind of start staying inside. And then I would say probably in Arizona, like spring or fall, right at that, that's when we get into our nice 80-degree days. But now if I lived in a normal climate, I definitely like fall.
You like fall. And so we'd say autumn. We don't use fall, but that's the same,
yes.
Isn't it? That season. Cool. All right. Star sign.
Ooh, I get asked that a lot. That's funny. I'm a Pisces. And what are you?
I'm a Sagittarian.
Oh, Sagittarius.
Yeah, right on the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarian. So it's pretty interesting. Are you spiritual? Do you believe in God or a higher power?
Yep, I am.
Yeah, I heard you mention God before. Is there you mentioned the Bible, so would you say you're a Christian?
Yeah, it's kind of, I have a funny story about that, but yeah, so my sister and I have different dads, and her dad was a pastor. And so my sister grew up in church. And so when I was, a little girl, I would go to church with my sister, and then my best friend was a Christian. And so I'd go to Christian church with them. My dad was atheist, and my mom, didn't go to church ever, really. She does now, but when we were younger, she didn't. So yeah, that was quite interesting. And then I got baptized when I was 11. I remember at a Christian church camp, and I was by myself in a lake. And I was like, where's my mom and dad? But I hung out with my best friend all the time. So I grew up, going to church with her, because I would stay the weekends with her, we always went to church on Sunday. So that's kind of how I got started in my faith many years ago.
Cool. And is it still an important aspect of your life?
Oh, yeah. Yep, definitely. It's been interesting. The last couple of years as I've really gotten to dive deeper into the meaning of sex and sexuality, because I feel like the closer we get to understanding our own, sexuality, we tend to start to pull away from our spirituality, and we don't really know how to link the two. And so in my faith, we're kind of raised where don't, the purity culture, right? Like, don't have sex till you're married, you're bad, you're wrong. So all the guilt and shame that comes around that. And then you get married, and then you're supposed to have sex, but you've been told don't do it your whole life. So you're like, now what? And then, that's kind of the disconnect I've discovered. And, it's kind of come up for me in the last couple of years, is that I've had a lot of people write into me talking about, the past, conditioned shame that they feel from being, in the churches and things, and how it's affected their sex life, and how do they undo that, and how do they get to a place where they can have, a really healthy sex life that they've always wanted without feeling, the guilt and shame that accompanies it.
All right, screw these questions. This is really interesting. So what do you find when they have those they have those feelings? How do you work them through that?
Yeah. So a lot of the past conditioning, we are so disconnected, especially as women, to our own bodies and on even our society. We don't really talk a lot about a woman's sexuality. I mean, think about, I don't know when you had sex education, but it's usually in 5th grade from your PE teacher, and you're taught, maybe about the female and the male, genitals. And then you're taught like about the male's sex drive. And then you get to learn how to put a condom on a banana. And then you learn about your period. That's what we learn. And so there's
I missed that lesson. I wasn't there that day when they did the banana thing at school. So I was like, what? So I had to hear it from my friends, which obviously they had fun with. But anyway, sorry, I digress.
You missed the banana day.
I missed the banana day,
Yeah. So, it's hard. It's really hard to find a lot of information on how do you, blend the two. And so I kind of went down the road a few years ago of studying Tantra and the spirituality and creating a sacred conscious sex life. And so that really opened my eyes up to what, God really wants for us. And it's really kind of wanting to learn and undo the past beliefs that you have and learn something new, and learn what is it that God really wants for us in our relationships.
And what did you find with the two? Do they overlap? Because I'm just thinking from what I would maybe judge or stereotype, that might be frowned upon in the Christian community to even go down that road to have a look at what that means.
Right. Isn't that funny? I think that is so crazy, since we're called to recreate, we're called to be intimate with our partners. And, if you think about it, God wants us to come together in that way. And I don't know if you know this, but the word orgasm means, little death, like you die and you're born again. And so if you really start researching, the meaning of creating a sacred sex life and how you can actually bring even that presence into the bedroom with you, it takes on a whole new meaning, you really hold it in higher regard, and starting to understand that, the female body is not bad. The things that we, share with our partner is not taboo. But unfortunately, I feel like the devil's grabbed a hold of the, female sexuality, and he monetizes it because it's that good. And so women have just completely disconnected from it, because the way it's monetized, it makes it look wrong and dirty. And so they don't know how to bring, the erotic, forbidden taboo things into the bedroom and make peace with those.
And I guess that then brings with it a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, which are the two, as men, we know that if your woman's feeling those things, you're not getting any action, right? Because she needs to feel safe in that area. And so it's kind of a disservice then we're doing to say, hey, you shouldn't talk about this and don't express yourself in that way. And of course there's boundaries, right? We're not talking about like whatever people's perception or measure is of something that's too far down the line, but
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about having a healthy connection with your own body for women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, you have to first be able to recognize that there's a problem, right?
Mhm.
You have to be able to say, there's a problem and I don't know how to fix it. And we're not taught in church how to fix it. And they
Mm.
haven't kind of come up to speed with that. Some churches have, but a lot of them are still far behind. And so it's just your own personal journey of, there's so many amazing books on, bringing God into the bedroom and integrating spirituality and sexuality. And there's great podcasts, and it's really just starts on your own journey, because you have to relearn a lot of past conditioning that you believe, and overcome a lot of, self-doubt and, guilt and shame and all of those things. And so if you were to go to a church where they're like, have sex, do fun, crazy things with your partner, that's what it's meant to be, you're like, nope, that's not what the Bible says. And so it takes time to really read into, new perspectives and new ideas. And it's really not new. It's in the Bible. They've just been sadly overlooked.
Yeah, maybe we should ask Solomon, wisest man ever, and he had probably the best sex life of everyone in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And that doesn't get taught in churches very often. There's not a lot of sermons being, taught on that topic.
It's really interesting because there is a sacredness to it, right? There's a sacredness of connecting on such an intimate, what deeper level can two people connect on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is physical, it's spiritual, it's mental, it's emotional, like it's hitting, hitting every sort of level, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really interesting that when I'm talking to, say, young couples who are thinking about getting engaged and married and things like that, this topic is the thing that they're most nervous about talking about. And there's not much in terms of education. I hope this makes sense, but even I'm thinking about my children. And so when they get into the ages in high school and stuff like that, I'm like, we should be teaching how to run businesses at school, and we should be teaching how to have healthy relationships in all aspects of what that looks like. Because if we're not teaching, right? Okay. Because if we're not doing that, all they're doing is they're learning from the dark web, or they're learning from places that we don't really want them to be looking at. I'm trying not to say what it is, just so that this video doesn't get pulled down, but they're learning from that, or they're learning from back in my days, there's magazines and stuff like that, and it's all fake, it's not real. And so they're trying to measure up to something that isn't even real, and therefore they're condemning themselves even more, and then further isolating themselves from having those deep relationships.
Mm-hmm. Right, because we don't even know how to talk to our own children about it. So we say the same thing, like, just, it's bad, it's, don't do it till you're married. And then you can figure it out. And then they learn, from the web, and that's becomes their instructor, because that's all that they know. So they don't really know that it's something that is supposed to, be sacred within your relationship, and how our bodies are designed to receive pleasure. I mean, I go through the men I coach, I go through their sexual stories. Like, when was your first, recollection of having sexual thought from, even as a child? And if you think about it, a lot of kids are, condemned for playing doctor or touching themselves or whatever. We're scorned, and we're made to feel that it's wrong, versus that, oh, that's your body, and it does feel good, but can you do it in your bedroom? And can you not touch other people, because it needs to be consensual, right? And we don't want to get in trouble, touching somebody inappropriately when they don't want you to be touched. And so, using discernment and agency is so powerful in teaching our kids that. I mean, the one thing that's free, it's free in the world.
It is free. Yeah.
We tell people it's wrong. Don't do it. You can't do it. But it's natural. And so if we approach it as something that is God-given, and it's okay for your body to want and desire to receive pleasure, it needs to align with who you are. And I love looking at it like giving your kids the power of choice, right? So talking to them, what are your thoughts on the topic? Like, would you feel like, that sexual energy come up for you, where do your thoughts go, and what do you do with those? And if it is ideal, yes, to save it till marriage, because here's why. But if it does happen, teaching them the power of consent and choice, and empowering them in those ways, because most people do it before they get married. Some don't. And when you engage in that, you feel all of that past conditioning and the guilt and the shame come up, and that can really wreak havoc on your chance of a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing it this way, the way we're talking about, you're actually solving a lot of issues before they happen, right? Because if all of that is hidden away, and not talked about in an open and healthy way, and then let's take the scenario of a girl finds herself in a position where, you know, she's with someone, he wants to have sex and she does as well, but she's a little bit like, oh, I shouldn't, etc., etc. And whatever happens, consensually, of course. But then now she's got so much guilt and shame, she can't even come back to the people that love her, adore her, want the best for her, to talk about what's happened, because she doesn't want to be seen and or you know, labeled, the word that women get labeled if they sleep around and things like that. And so then we create a bigger problem because we're further pushing people into shame and condemnation, and not, you know, trying to help them through maybe a difficult scenario.
Right. And then unfortunately, a lot of women have been conditioned to believe, and women in marriages that are 50, 60 years old will still say, you know, you just want sex. Men just use you for sex, because we never teach our sons that, you know, sex is something that needs to be handled very delicately between two people, because a woman's heart is connected to her womb. So you know, she can't enter that bedroom and leave her soul at the door. And so when you connect with her in that way, and, you know, you have no relationship afterwards, or you dump her, you know, it starts to condition all of the women to believe that men only want us for sex. Well, we feel that because our hearts connect to you, because that's connected to our womb. And so when that happens, women start getting this, you know, perception that men just want you for sex. And that's so not true.
And on the other side, men connect via sex. So we have the sex and then we open up and then we're like, oh, okay, I'm happy to talk about my feelings now or whatever, because we use that as a catalyst to, I've connected with you and it's a deep connection. My mind's blown and now I'm able to share with you, which is kind of the opposite way around. So someone somewhere has to take the lead and go one way or the other. And it tends to be the man, but it needs to be reciprocated, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. So how I explain it to women is that I feel like the easiest, you know, analogy I can use is kind of like, before a man gets married, he doesn't have a soul that connects to yours unless he feels you're the one. He's really attracted to you. He thinks I could date this girl, like, or he would want to marry you. Then the hormones get released, right? The oxytocin, the vasopressin, that gets released, and he feels that bonding hormone to you, so he connects to you. So outside of a relationship, men don't deeply connect and have those hormones released like women do. But when they feel that, now inside of a relationship, through sex, that is how he shows you love in the best way he knows how, through his body. Right? Because you have to remember that not a lot of men are great with their words. And so that's how also he feels deeply connected to you. And so women are like, well, great. And it's like, we feel deeply connected to them before and they've burned us a million times, right? But then we get into a relationship and sex isn't, you know, as big of a need for us. And we tend to kind of put it on the back burner, yet we forget that's how our men connect to us through in the relationship. And it's not about, you know, just using us for sex anymore. It's about actually deeply, him wanting to deeply connect with you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And do you, when you're saying this to women, do you find that they respond well? Does it take, you know, them by, oh yeah, that makes
You
sense?
know,
Or
it took me years of research to convince me that this is how it was. But the thing about it is like, men are actually really easy. And it's such a bonus for women. They're easy. They're really, I mean, we're both simple creatures if we take the time to really understand each other, you know? And so telling women stories like that, or the other story that I like to use is that, like, as a woman is pregnant and she has a child, oxytocin is released when the baby comes out so that she bonds with the baby. Right. And that tends to be why she'll put the baby first over all the other things in her marriage, because she has that really deep, intense bonding hormone. And I like to say it's because if she didn't have that release, she'd probably kill the child for the pain that it just caused her. Right. So she gets this big hit of oxytocin. And so she really bonds with that. Well, that's how our husbands feel when, you know, in the relationship. So imagine if you had that child, you bonded to it, you know, you love it, you want to be with it, and it's rejecting you. Like, it won't let you hold it. It cries all the time. It doesn't want anything to do. It won't let you feed it. Like, that's the rejection that men feel. That's that deep sense of, but wait, we're connected and you're my wife. And it's like if we were rejected from our child, wait, you're my child. Why are you rejecting me?
This is one of those moments where you've said something and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, just makes so much sense. Like, that's it. That's exactly what it feels like.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
putting that into words is really, really difficult, you know?
mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's well received by women, but unfortunately, again, in our society, women aren't taught that sex is for us. We're taught
Mhm.
about a man's sexuality, and our sexuality is nothing like theirs. So we feel broken all the time. And so we disconnect from it. And so
Mm.
learning to really embrace our own sexuality and, you know, have confidence in who we are as women and really truly learning to love ourselves, then can we give in that way, to the man in our lives.
And just playing on words here, thinking back to a couple of other podcasts I've done in terms of the relationships, the feminine sort of part of femininity is to receive, and whereas part of masculinity is to give. So do you think that women thinking they have to give their man sex is part of the problem? And
Mm-hmm.
instead of like opening up to say, hey, I'm going to receive the love that my spouse is, wanting to
Mm-hmm.
give me, do you think that would
Mm-hmm.
change the dynamic?
Oh, absolutely. 1,000% for sure. But in life, women, we are in our masculine, do, go, 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 run, all the schedules and manage everything that we don't even sit down to, receive from ourselves. We don't sit down
Mhm.
to take time to enjoy that pleasure in life. And if we can't do that, how can we receive pleasure in the bedroom and actually enjoy it for us and look at it as like, this is a pleasurable, healthy experience for me.
Mhm. Mhm. So if a woman was listening now, which I believe they will be, what would be one thing you'd say to them to help them shift more into that kind of mindset?
Yeah. So I don't know if any of women listening have ever heard of women's embodiment programs, but I went through one a year and a half ago and it really completely changed my life.
Okay.
They help you understand like your past conditioning and the kind of things that have happened in society and, growing up in your family and the churches that have kind of even bad relationships that have led you to where you are today, and to work through those issues that you have so that you can learn to, embrace yourself as a sexually confident woman. And that's for you. It's not for anyone else.
Okay. And oh wow. Okay. I didn't expect that. And is
Hmm.
that quite easy to find if someone like, even if I'm not a woman, but let's say I put myself in those shoes and go, no, that sounds really scary. Why would I want to do
Hmm.
that? That's, what
Hmm.
kind of steps of courage would you give them, or, vision would you give them to
Do
push
it.
them in that direction? Do it.
I flew out to it. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was like, I just need something. I wasn't happy. Like it was
Mhm.
like, why, why do I not feel happy? I have so many great things in my life. Like, where's my happy gone?
Mm.
And, as you start to get older in life, you look in the mirror and you're like, who am I turning into? Like my mom. And you start getting down on yourself. And I just thought I needed something different. And so one of my friends was hosting a women's embodiment program and she invited me out to it. And it completely, completely changed my life. It
Mm.
really, it just gets you in touch with your sexuality, and your sexuality is for you. It's feeling confident and beautiful and loving who you are as a woman. Because if you can't show up, in your relationship now, you're not going to be, as that sexually confident woman, you're not going to be able to do it in another
Mm.
relationship, because you're right. Sex won't do it. Your sexuality, it's an energy that you
Mhm.
exude from your core, and it's the beliefs that you have. So you really
Mm.
need to work on yourself. And the women's embodiment programs are absolutely amazing. There's no counselor, there's no coaching, none of those things. And they teach you how to be more in your feminine. And as
Mhm.
women, we think we are in our feminine, but we have so many scars from the past, and we have, so many beliefs about men that we need to, kind of get rid of so that we can rethink new things about men and new things about
Mm.
ourselves, and really learn to be more feminine and sit back and receive. And part of being the feminine in a relationship is being able to receive, but also to give to yourself, right?
Mm.
Create that time for yourself. Get out in nature, go dancing, do some hobbies that you love, even if it's 5 minutes a day. Just really
Mm.
take that time to, maybe it's meditate, do some stretching, do something that you pour into yourself so that you feel good about who you are as a woman.
That's good. And on that note, is there anything that you do on a daily basis? Like, do you have a rhythm or a routine that you kind of put into place to keep you sort of balanced?
Yeah, I take a bath every night.
Like a proper full-on
I
bath,
take
not
a
a shower,
bath
like a
every
full-on
night.
bath.
But the funny thing is that before I really understood how to enjoy the pleasure in life, I would just get in the bath, right? It was like, I just gotta take a bath tonight, shave my legs, whatever. But when you really learn how to feel pleasure, and I like to call it turn on in life, it's really stopping and smelling the roses. It's like if you have that cup of coffee, really just, smelling into it. It's anything that gives you that kind of feeling, right? That's pleasure. That's that turn on in life. And I like to use the word turn on because we use it in the bedroom, but we don't really use it outside. And if we can start to retrain our brains, it's like, I feel turn on. I feel pleasure when
Yeah.
I get in the bathtub. Like I can get in the bath now and I stick my hand under the water and I let it run on my hands and my fingers. And it's just such a different experience for me because I can take it in a different way, in a more feminine way, meaning that I can engage my senses and, let it pour into my soul and feel that pleasure and just slow down my breath and receive what is there versus, get in, wash your feet, get out.
Yeah, out. Think about the thing that you have to do next. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I work, with the men I work with, I help them to communicate in a way that women understand it. So we're not always just talking about sex, but even about turn on, because turn ons and turn offs happen outside of the bedroom.
Sure.
And so if you can figure out what turns her off outside of the bedroom, then you can figure out what turns her on inside of the bedroom. And also, if you could turn her on, figure out what turns her on outside, which really has nothing to do with, sex. It's about, a long walk. Maybe, going sitting in the hot tub together, maybe cooking her favorite meal, like doing things that make her feel good about herself and just finding like what turns you on and what turns you off. It's a funny story. My son is 21 and his girlfriend is 20. They've been in a relationship for 4 years. And so we're always talking about sex very openly in my family and we always have jokes about it. And so
around Thanksgiving dinner and stuff.
Yeah. We do. And so I started with them like the whole turn on, turn off thing, like outside of the bedroom. And so when my son does things like that she thinks are annoying or whatever, she's like, turn off. But if you really stop and think about it, that's where the divide starts to happen in a relationship.
Sure.
Because I always say, open her heart, open her legs. And so if you can't get her heart to open, you're not going to get her legs to open. So if you leave the toilet seat up and you don't put your toothbrush away, like those things annoy her and they feel like a turn off. And so it's, kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts, but you're killing your intimate life before you even get into the bedroom. So if you can't turn her on out there, then you're never going to be able to turn her on in the bedroom. So there's no techniques that are going to, better your sex life. You just start putting the toilet seat down if that's what turns her off.
That's such a great way to look at it because it's a different perspective on the same thing. So as a man, I'd be like, oh, I have to like earn my way into the bedroom, right? I've got to make sure this is done, that's done, that's done. And it seems like you're lifting her up on a pedestal and then she gives you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. But when you look at it from that perspective, it makes so much more sense.
Right? I say it's not sex night, it's sex life.
Sex
And
life.
it really, I mean, even for men, I say it happens a lot for women, but even for men, you have to have that connection outside of the bedroom. I mean, otherwise it's just, penis and vagina exchange. It's not actually like an intimate, deep experience, which is what you guys want as well.
It is funny. I grew up with women, so I think I'm more in touch with my feelings, or at least able to talk about them a little bit more than your average guy. And so when I talk to men and they're like, yeah, bim bam out, I'm like, but bro, have you really stopped to take your time and enjoy your experience? Because it's going to be 20 times better for you as well as it is for her, and I think people, and it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, people are just conditioned to be like 2-3 minutes, right, done, I'm out, and
Because
job done.
Think about who our teachers are, our PE teacher, and like you said, the dark web. So that's who teaches us, and so we don't know any different. We don't know how to create, a sacred, intimate life. We don't understand that what we put in our bodies affects how we show up in the bedroom without clothes on, right? And so being able to honor that as a sacred relationship, you really want to honor yourself so that you bring forth the best of you into that intimate experience.
So is the secret to a good sex life, or at least regular sex with your partner, is to make her feel good about herself? So it's not about making her feel good, it's about making her feel good about herself. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, actually, that's not the biggest secret, but that's a huge part of it, because I think as men, you start to notice that there's a problem first, right? Like we are disconnected, and your sex life's kind of a thermometer gauging, where are things starting to go off and wrong in the relationship. And a lot of times, the two coincide where the sex isn't great. And then the next thing the guy will say is, and, she's really insecure, and she, doesn't like herself, or her self-esteem is really low. And a lot of times that boils down to the fact that she's just ran ragged. She's in her masculine. She's just do, go, go, go. And she doesn't take time for herself. And if you think about it in relationships, we kind of are oracles, or we mirror each other's flaws, right? And so if you notice a problem coming up, you're actually giving her a gift to be able to say, hey, I miss the connection we once had in the bedroom. How do we get back there? And a lot of times as women, we don't know, because we have put that on the back burner so that we can get all the other things done. And so it's not ever about taking the trash out. It's about removing some things on her plate that are, partly your responsibility in the relationship, so that she can have that little bit of downtime, so she can go meditate, or, take that hot bath and kind of relax back into who she is as a woman, so that she feels joyful and confident and loving and can give back to you.
Makes a lot of sense. I know our time is really precious, so I want to switch it on the other way around. What do men want? What do men want?
Sex and respect.
Sex and respect. And that ties in quite nicely with your Instagram handle, right? So you're the respected man.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
why men desire sex
respect.
and respect in relationships. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. So why do we want those things? What's important?
Well, men in your masculine, you want to be the leader. And so you want to be able to make, decisions in the relationship, and have your wife admire you for those decisions, and admire you for your unique talents and things that you bring to the table. And when she starts to override that, you feel less of a man. You feel like you're not doing your job, and, all the guilt and shame, comes into play. And so when you say this to women, I love to say it really boldly, like respect and sex, but those two topics go so much deeper than just that. And any woman would be like, he ain't getting sex. He doesn't do anything around the house. And I'm not going to respect him because he makes dumb financial decisions. Right. But really, respect is just admiring him for his unique talents and qualities. I mean, clearly you chose him to be with as a partner or your husband. And so at one point in time, he must have had some sort of unique, talents and abilities that attracted you to him, and trying to help bring those back out in him. And I love, men are so simple. I mean, give them a compliment once in a while and they'll take the trash out every day of the week, right? Like, it's easy. But women, we have a hard time complimenting ourselves. And so we're not going to give him a compliment because he doesn't deserve it. But if you can understand the magic behind really supporting and admiring your man for who he is, and just being grateful and thankful, it goes so far. And then he starts to reciprocate, the things that she needs in the relationship. And like I said, with the whole sex topic, it's not sex like how women view, men use us for sex, or sex is just for men. It's really a beautiful thing, because if you understand what it means to embrace your sexuality as a woman, it's life-changing in every relationship in your life. It really truly is a gift to yourself as a woman. And a lot of times when women can't open up sexually in the relationship, it's because they have a lot of like past sexual trauma that's happened deep. Maybe not a lot, but deep. It can,
and it gets stored in the body, right?
Something like a little boy in 3rd grade made fun of your boobs on the playground because they were too big and you had to wear a bra before everybody else did. Like, that's past sexual trauma. But when we just stuff it as women too, and we drag that into the relationship, just like men, it starts to leak out in other areas. And so when you start to embrace your sexuality, you get to start working through some of those traumas and things that are holding you back from really, truly being able to love yourself. It's not even about him. It's about loving you. So for all of the women that are listening, if your husband is complaining about not having sex, what he's really saying is he wants you to love yourself on a deeper level, and he doesn't know how to help you do that.
And I'd add to that, and he thinks the absolute world of you, so he wants to share that with you. I I don't know if you have any pets, right? I used to have a cat years
I
ago.
have 2 cats.
You have 2 cats. All right. So my cat used to go out into the wherever he went, and he'd come back with a pigeon or something, and then he'd have the wings out of his mouth, and he'd want to present this gift to us, like, "Hey,
Mm.
I got this pigeon," and so it was really meaningful for him. And what he wanted to do was bring this pigeon, and we're like, "Oh, that's disgusting! I don't want to see a pigeon." But I kind of thought about that in light of what you're talking about, in that for men, like, sex is one of the most precious things and the most enjoyable, mind blowing things that we can have, and so we want to share that with the person as like, hey, I want you to be part of this because this is the most special thing to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This has got a similar sort of dynamic going on there. And then it's funny that women might say, you dirty git, that's all you're thinking about, you know.
Right, because we haven't ever been taught, or, you know, in, you know, the female side of things, we don't, if you talk about sex, you're shamed, if you act like you like it, and we're like, well, wait, what? You and your husband have sex all the time? Like, why would you be talking, you're labeled. And so even as women, we tend to not talk about it, even amongst our friends, because it's not a cool thing. Like with men, it's a lot different, subject, and it's well accepted. With women, it's not. And so who do you talk to? There's not Bible studies you can go to that teach women about their sexuality. There's, you don't have, a lot of women don't have supportive friends if you try to dive into this topic and try to start unraveling it for yourself. And so we just disconnect. But truly, when you can understand, what pleasure means to a woman and understand your sexuality in life, it changes everything. So if your husband or your man in your life is begging you, this is really just a calling for you to really step up and learn to love yourself and forgive yourself and remove the past conditioning, guilt, and shame, and step into, why we're here on this earth.
Amazing. And then with all of that, we need courage, right? Whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, there's courage that needs to happen, or you need to decide to move forward in your bit of it, whether you're the woman or the man.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it takes a lot of courage. That's why when I started my brand, my sister was like, "You're never going to get a date."
Have you found that?
Right. I'm going to attract the right guy into my life.
Yeah.
I'm a sex coach for men. Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that guy's going to need a lot of courage, right?
Yeah. But I love to say, it's courageous what I do. I really dug my heels in for a long time and was like, God, no, I am not doing this. Like, and he was like, yes, you are. And really how I look at it is I help men reflect back to women. I really feel like I get to work with the women because I know women so well. And so I help men effectively communicate their needs and desires in a way that it's a gift to women. It really helps encourage them to, be in a space where they can learn to love themselves again. And what, more of a beautiful gift than to receive that from your partner. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage because it's going against the grain. And even for men, teaching sexual mastery and like a whole different way to look at, building a sacred sex life. They're like, where were you when I was 20? Here I am 50, and I've gone about it a whole different way. And even using different terminology around it makes it a lot more fun and sacred, like when you can have intentional sex and set intentions before you actually come together, and just make it such a beautiful thing where you honor each other as lovers in the relationship. It completely changes it. But you have to want to be willing also to, have the courage to change your mindset and really, create new beliefs around it.
It's really good. And it's about bringing these things out of the darkness and then into the light, instead of pushing them into the darkness, thinking they're things that we shouldn't be talking about or shouldn't be exploring, or trying to understand better as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know our time is short and our time is precious. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was just in terms of divorce. So with divorce, do you see that it is the needs that are not being met that is the primary concern for those things? I appreciate, there's other reasons as well, but do you see that if they're not connected on this level, that there's a higher rate of divorce?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Sexless relationships really, really contribute to the increase in divorce for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's so sad. And I keep saying, if we could all just stop cheating on each other and speak up for what we really need in the relationship, the world would be a whole different place.
And
and the
when
more
and
we,
you bring up cheating, because I'm trying to link all the kind of threads here. So you got the Bible, and the Bible's very clear on adultery, and it's very clear on
Mhm.
cheating. But then you have maybe not very healthy education around sex, so that people look for it elsewhere outside of the dynamic of their relationships, and
Mhm,
then that
mhm.
causes
Yeah,
issues.
that's taking place in the churches a lot too. I mean, I have so many people write into me that say they've been removed from their churches because there was cheating that took place, yet the covenant of marriage was broken long before the cheating took place. When emotional abandonment was happening, the covenant of marriage is broken. When you're choosing to not get divorced, but you're not choosing your partner, you're not choosing that marriage. You've broken the covenant of marriage. And
Mm,
your husband's sex drive is a God given gift to your marriage. It truly is. And so if you're failing to understand that and you're putting that need aside and you're just saying, I don't choose you, I just choose to not get divorced, the covenant of marriage has been already broken a long time before that. But in the churches, we're just taught, just don't get divorced. That's okay. Just, put your needs. And that's kind of where I'm a little bit disheartened, because we're not really embracing that we have a problem and more people are getting divorced, and the church's answer is just marry more people versus
mm,
like keep our congregation together and keep these marriages together and help educate the women on how they can embrace their own sexuality for them and share that in a way that's honoring to their husband and to their faith. And so that's kind of where I feel like the failure happens. And then men, so what do? They stay and don't get divorced, and they end up, a lot of them end up cheating and getting their needs met, their desires, and most of the time, 90% of the time, they don't even love the person they cheat with. It was just like, but they love their partner and they're sad. And so they'll choose to sin against their own body. And probably 90% of the men that do that, they're equally as traumatized after an affair happens, because they're choosing to not disrupt their family and sin against their own body to keep their family together and not get divorced, versus
mm,
empowering them to stand up and say, this is really important to me. They end up looking like the bad guys because they don't know how to verbalize their needs, because we're taught in church, don't make a woman do anything sexually she doesn't want to do. So, the conditioning's so backwards, and it's not about making her do anything she doesn't want to do. It's helping inspire her and giving her a gift that she is unaware of and you're unaware of, but you kind of just keep quiet because she doesn't like to, do those
mm,
things in the bedroom with you. So you're not going to make her, because that makes you a bad person. And so
mm.
therefore, that's when a lot of the affairs happen, or women have emotional affairs. I think women have just as many affairs as men do, to be honest with you, when that's taking place in the relationship. And it's really sad, because I'm like, men, we need to speak up in a loving way, to change these things in the relationship. But it always gets so twisted around, I feel like, from our past, beliefs and conditioning, that we don't even know where to start. We don't know where to change these beliefs.
Mm. Do you think the tide is turning?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. Especially with the new rise of the masculine and feminine, and bringing that into modern day times, and really, with the masculine embodiment programs and the women's embodiment programs, really teaching men and women, it's not about, being a man or a woman. It's about the energies we bring and learning to love ourselves, and, stepping back into the roles that kind of got reversed years ago that aren't
Mm.
working. They're not working. And
Yeah,
everybody's
that,
craving something different. So they're looking for a new way. So I do feel like there's a huge shift. And I've met a lot of people, in the churches that have the same belief. And I just feel like there's this huge uprising. And like I said, I feel called to do this because I dug my heels in for a long time, and I was like, no way, God, I am not doing this. And I just have felt so called. And every step along the way has just been, me feeling, I'm an empath, so feeling for people, feeling like there's such a huge need
mm,
to help these couples stay together.
mm. Can I ask you what people misunderstand about you?
Yes, that's just it. When you say the word sex, they think I'm, porn star sex instructor for men, and I'm so far from that. And even for me, that's what gets misunderstood. I'm like, no, I help men create sacred sex lives with their partners. Like, I'm not out. And believe it or not, I don't really have to teach a lot of the things that go in the bedroom. Right? I'm teaching what happens outside of the bedroom, how to reconnect outside of the bedroom. But yeah, that's probably honestly, that's the biggest thing that's misunderstood about me. And then also, I have been married for a total of 20 years of my life. And so I've been single the last 4 or 5 years, and feeling like even when men approach me and they'll, oh, you're sexy, you're hot, I want to have sex. Well, guess what? A woman who embraces her sexuality doesn't mean she has sex with anyone. I was like, you're totally getting me wrong. I'm a woman who likes to talk about the topic of sex and sexuality, but that doesn't mean that I'm a sexual porn star, right? I really like, hot monogamy with one person, and then we can create our own hot, erotic, sacred sex life, right, between the two of us. But that's what gets misconstrued a lot. I've gotten a lot of great offers that I've had to pass up. I'm like, no, thanks. That's not me.
Which is the exact problem, right? So if we think about sexuality, we're thinking this woman is a charlatan.
Yes.
She's like the worst of the worst. That's it. We've got to cast her out and condemn her.
Yeah.
So it's about education, isn't it?
Yeah, the labels we put on people, even talking openly about this topic, people think so differently, but that's just past belief and conditioning. So if you think that, recognize it and start doing your own, research and start to learn how to, view it from a different perspective, because it will change your life.
Totally. And I'll be honest with you, this is a step of courage for me to actually talk about this and go on YouTube. I know this is your world, and you've overcome some of those barriers. But for me to have this conversation with you was a bit of a like, oh gosh, I can hear the voices of some of the community that I've hung around with going, why are you talking to this woman? Why are you bringing this up? Like, this is not cool. But I'm like, no, it's bring this stuff into the light, bring it into a healthy place, and explore this in a healthy way, as opposed to keeping it in the dark and building resentment.
Right. And that's what we need to do. Talk about it in a healthy way. And so that we can all learn from each other. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you incorporate like tantric practices into your relationship? How do you bring prayer into the bedroom? Like, those types of things. I have partners that I have a couple that are Mormon and then Christian right now. And so I've asked them if they've ever prayed before an intimate experience with their wife. And they're like, no. It's like shocking, right? But imagine the power of how that would change. And so talking about intimacy and sex in that way should be definitely more open and talked about and discussed at the dinner table. If there's a lot more honesty around it, I think there'd be a lot less, cheating.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, how are you going to hide from this God who sees everything, right? Is he going to turn away when you're having sex? So it's kind of like, you can't hide from God, right? So you might as well just embrace it with courage and look at it in a healthy way.
And pray. Pray before you go into it.
and pray before you go in. There you go.
That's what I say. Like, you have to change it up. You have to adopt new beliefs. You have to adopt new patterns. You have to make it something that has never been made. And that takes time, because if we think about it, we put time into building our careers and a family, and then we just think that amazing sex magically should happen.
Yeah,
you don't know how to put time and build that, and make a blueprint on, make a plan that actually works, and then practice it.
Absolutely. Where can people find you if they wanted to know more about this? Maybe get in touch with you. What kind of services do you offer? How could people connect with you?
So I have a couple ebooks that I have written, and then I also have a course for men. It's a pre-recorded 2-hour course, self-paced course that they can find on Instagram. And my Instagram is at the respected.man. Got to put the 2 dots in between.
Okay. I'll put a link in the description.
Yes. And then I am actually launching a men's group program starting in January, which is called Resignation. And so you can also find that on my Instagram. And it's going to be, I love the name, Resignation. Resigning from what doesn't work and learning new ways, right? Let go of the old and learn new ways. And so I help men in that program, kind of get rid of some old beliefs and patterns and some things that weren't working, and discover a new way and some new tools that they can implement into their relationship, so they can create that deeper, sexually fulfilling relationship that they want with their wives and partners. And that's launching in January.
Amazing.
Yes.
I'm thinking resignation. So you're, for a man, I'm like, whoa, that's giving up. I don't want to give up, right? But then even linking to what you said about orgasm is like a mini death that then you have to resurrect from, right? So changing mindset, you do have to kill things off and prune things in order to grow and move forward, don't you?
Right? Exactly.
So,
It's yeah, even like the way you think of that. Now when you start to think of
mm,
that when you have an orgasm, it's a completely different experience and the bonding that
mm,
comes, yeah, in place. But, so I love the word resignation. It's so great. It's like resign nation. We're resigning. We are a nation resigning from what's not working and
mm.
creating something that does. Yes. I contemplated
Amazing.
that as well. I was like, resign. And I was like, no, that's what we're doing. Resignation. We're creating a nation of men who resign. They're giving up the old ways and learning something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the secular world has done that. They've told men what's wrong, what toxic masculinity looks like, what feminism look like. And all of these things, I think they're birthed in great intentions. But I think,
Absolutely.
if it goes too far the other way, then what we're doing is we're killing the very spirit of the feminine form and the masculine form as well, and getting ourselves very confused about what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you know nothing about masculine and feminine, research it, read on it, study it, because it's the law of polarity and everything in the world is magnetic. And so that's what attraction is. It's not about being the most beautiful person. It's about being magnetically attracted in your
Mm.
relationship. So if you haven't heard anything about that topic, study it because it's hot right now and it's changing lives and relationships.
Brilliant. Well, my heart is to connect people to other people as well. So love that you've given us when people can find you. If they have questions, can they just DM you or respond to some of your stories and things like that?
Yep. Yep.
Find
They
out
can
more
DM
information.
me, respond to my stories. Yep. And they can even join my email list so that I can start sending them some, weekly
Brilliant.
tips that I have and some of the new stuff that's coming out.
Fantastic. I have so many questions to ask you, but we'll have to do that another time. We'll go again in 2024 or something.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that'd be really good. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's very precious. We've made our time zones work today, so thank you for that. And one last word from you. Anyone listening, what can they hear from you? The last thing, give them a push in the right direction.
If I had to give everybody one last word, it's that we need to accept the differences between men and women and stop viewing them as a curse.
Beautifully put. Love it. All right. So if
Yeah.
you're listening to this or you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow and all that beautiful stuff. But whatever you're going through, whether it's in relationships or in your everyday life, keep moving forward and keep going in courage. See you on the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.
What a great conversation with Teresa today. I don't feel like we had enough time with her, so I'm really glad that she has agreed to come back on a future episode. So if you don't want to miss out, do hit that subscribe button on YouTube and hit that notification bell, and then you won't miss out on future episodes. I think for me, having conversations around sex and relationships can be uncomfortable depending upon your cultural background. For me personally, I think it's all about courage. I think fear has kept the topic of sex away from a lot of people. We talked a little bit today about having it in the darkness and actually bringing it into the light. I think it's a courageous thing to do, and I think if it's something that you're struggling with and you need some professional help, I would always encourage you to go and maybe deal with some trauma that you might be carrying around it, some guilt, some shame, or maybe just some bad information that you've received or explored on your own. So definitely go away and do that. We are in the relationship series, so if you have been blessed by this, if you have felt that you have learned something new, or there's been some insights that have come out of these relationship series podcasts, I'd love to hear from you. You can do that, and people do that on Instagram via DM, so I think I'm going to stick to that platform. So if you'd like to reach out, you can do that privately on there. Or if you'd like to have a public conversation, go for it. Be courageous, be the first one. And you can do that on YouTube in the comments section there below. All right, before I go, just to remind you, the Courage Journal is available in the UK, in Australia, in the US, and across Europe as well. Did I miss Canada? Sorry, Canada, I missed Canada. It's available in Canada as well. And that's 31 days of building courage through some very well thought out prompts and some inspiration in there as well to help encourage you to move forward.